one of the things that was really expected, or at least called for in this budget, was something to help businesses. And we had a corporation tax lowered to, what, 24% from next month. Is that going to provide a significant boost?
Well, significant, you can argue. I think it's the right direction to go in. The big problem that we have is that businesses are not investing enough. Businesses are very cash rich, but they're not yet confident enough to invest in additional capacity for the recovery, partly, I think, because they keep seeing the recovery retreat into the future. But I think it's right to try to get businesses to invest, because that's what will get the British economy moving.
Azad, just how difficult is that going to be to get businesses to actually hire, spend, invest, so that the government or indeed the Bank of England or any other official institution doesn't have to step into the breach?
Well, we've had some of the details of the plans today being announced on the credit easing measures. That the idea is to try to help small and medium-sized businesses, especially, who are struggling to get access to funding from the banking system. And of course, because of their size, they can't access the bond market either. And so that help has been put in place. But in terms of for larger companies, clearly the corporation tax rate was the key move today.
And Ashley, what are your thoughts on that? Are we going to see a significant boost to small and medium-sized businesses? Because, of course, many people are saying this is absolutely key to, alleviating the stresses that we see right now. And at the moment, we're just way below our
I think yes, it will, and I think actually some of the announcements yesterday about the bank lending will help on that. But I do think one of the key things that came out of this speech was also its international flavour. If you actually look at what Osborne was saying, he was saying we need to look at China, we need to look at all these other types of jurisdictions, and we need to make the UK competitive. And so if you look at the airport plans that are going to be announced, if you look at the corporation tax, if you look at the lowering of the 50p, I think what he's actually trying to say there is we need to be open for business, and we are in a world market. So I think, yes, we need to help small businesses as well. But the international aspect is something he kept saying, and it's something that, frankly, in the politics got lost a bit, I think.
And of course, he did speak about an export-led recovery. So, Howard, how difficult is that? Why are UK businesses and companies lagging behind when it comes to their European counterparts, lagging behind their European counterparts when it comes to exports to emerging markets?
Well, yeah, he pointed to the key point, which is that we have been very poor at exploiting the opportunities presented by the BRICS. Less than half the proportion of our exports go to the BRICS as do from Germany or the US. I think in part that's because of the shape of the British economy. The Germans and the Americans do provide more in the way of capital goods, of the kinds of things and machine tools that those countries need as they expand their production. We don't seem to be very good at that. It would be great if we could expand our exports further, but it's the main policy of Obama as well.
Everyone's trying to do the same thing at the same time.
So I think it's going to be difficult to achieve the Chancellor's ambitions.
Azad, let me ask you then about the 50% top rate of tax going to be reduced to 45%. The Chancellor himself did actually point out that it's only raised about a third of the revenue that was expected. So why not scrap it altogether?
Well, I think for now, at least, it's still a symbolic tax, and it's still trying to show that the higher earners will still have to pay that little bit more. But I wouldn't be surprised if after the next election we could see it scrapped.
Ashley, another key point from this was that 50% stamp, 15% stamp duty on homes above £1 million for homes caught in a sort of corporation envelope. So does that effectively crack down on anyone trying to buy a home here in the UK through an offshore company?
Yeah, I mean, he actually said offshore, so we'll have to see whether actually it's just companies or whether it could also be trusts and other types of structures, because it isn't just companies that are used. But certainly I think what he's trying to do now is make sure that where there are homes over 2 million, if you are buying it through an offshore company, you aren't going to avoid tax. But the key point here, and this is where, again, the politics overtook the actual facts, when you actually buy it through a company, normally you do pay stamp duty at that. It's when you then sell that company on to then the next buyer, that's when you pay the 0.5%. So again, we have to look at the detail to see whether the Chancellor's measures actually are going to deal with the real tax problem, rather than perhaps get clouded a bit by the politics.
So when are we going to get more clarity on that?
Later today.
Later today.
What will happen, now as he sat down, he starts issuing press releases, and we will start getting a lot more detail, and then of course we've got the finance bill. But we will start to know whether the anti-avoidance rules will really actually work, probably later today.
Well, we will know that, but of course the yield question on these taxes, that'll take a lot further. And it's pretty clear from Ed Miliband's response that the political battleground now will be, can the government persuade people that the removal of the 50% tax band isn't costing much money, and that the other things are actually raising more money from the rich? Miliband's calculation is clearly that they won't be able to do that, that the headline reduction is the
It's
thing that
hurting,
people
but
will
it's not
focus
working, he
on.
said.
Yeah, and the other stuff will just be a tiny amounts from individuals, not very many of them, etc. That's clearly going to be the political battleground, and I think the coalition will have the work cut out on that.
Yeah, and so very little change, as Linda was saying, in the sort of substance of what we heard. Pretty much everything that we were expecting. As you say, it's a it's the politics of it that is perhaps more significant here than the economics of it. And so with that in mind, how much support did those low and middle income workers get, the households that are really coming under pressure right now, Howard, from low wage growth and higher fuel costs?
Well, the government has got a medium-term strategy there, which is to raise the threshold for tax to about 10,000. I don't think they can expect to get much benefit from what they've done today. The key thing for them, obviously, is when they get to the next election, will there be enough people who feel that they've been pulled away and that their earnings are starting to rise a bit. So this is not an election budget, let's remember. There isn't an election on the way. The key question is, can they maintain that profile? And I would say that strategy has been set out, it's in place, they've made a further progress towards it. I think it's probably the best strategy they can adopt.
I just want to get a quick final thought from all of you. I suppose the big challenge facing this country right now, dealing with its debt and also having a strategy to boost growth. Did we get that, Sir Howard?
Well, I think he focused on the debt, and I'm afraid, unfortunately, that's what we've still got to do. And I think he's got to hope that a very accommodative monetary policy persuades people to invest and gets the economy moving again.
No, absolutely. I think he kept things very safe today, reshuffled his pack a little bit and tried to make sure that he was doing enough to try to send the right signals to businesses to encourage more investment and greater jobs growth.
Yeah, I think he did a good job. And I think the reason is I think he realised that to get the economy going and business going is get money in people's hands.
Thanks very much indeed. That pretty much wraps up our budget coverage. Inside Business is next.